Hi, my name is Kaitlyn Dean, and this is my oral presentation for Professor Turner, English Composition 2. The origin of gender roles is my topic, and that's me in the corner with my best friend, in case you were wondering what I look like. The reason I'm doing the origin of gender roles is I'm interested in the psychology and gender differences and how different genders relate to each other based on social gender roles as well as biological gender roles. There are two sides to where gender roles come from. Professionals argue that gender roles come from simply biology and the genetics of humans, while others argue that gender roles come from the environmental and social aspect of life. And few agree on both and the fact that gender roles do come from both. However, my rules are based upon social and natural arrangements if the research and evidence developed by professionals who support gender roles development through social circumstances or only through biological genetics are similar in results and can relate to one another. Basically, what this means is by looking at the two sides of where gender roles come from, if their evidence is similar and can be related, then gender roles come from both social and natural arrangements. Who would be the parents and those generally interested in gender differences? Let's focus on the parents first. Parents are becoming informed about the future. Things such as feminism, transgender, the gay lesbian movement, all of these things are changing what gender roles look like and how they're portrayed in social concepts. Those who are generally interested in gender differences might enjoy this presentation because it gives an analysis for how and why genders contrast, and as well as biological and social on both ends. At this point, it's important to note that these are gender roles from the United States and not from other countries. Some countries don't have similar gender roles to us because they're not as developed or they're using certain genders in spots we normally wouldn't. So this is just assessing the US gender roles. I'm hoping you guys walk away with the response of being more aware of social circumstances and how you interact with others and how these affect your thoughts on genders and what each gender is supposed to do in everyday life. And also understand the biological differences in genders and appreciating these differences and just embracing them and not arguing about them, and just looking at how your social life and as well as your genetic biological gender affects you and how you personally act. It's important to know what a gender role is. I know it seems silly, but a lot of people don't actually understand the scientific definition of a gender role. A gender role is a set of behaviors and actions associated with one's biological or perceived sex, not necessarily just their natural sex, but even their perceived sex. And that's also where transgender comes in and gay lesbian acts and stuff like that. Let's focus on, for starting, the social gender roles. According to Kathy Young, the mother is the primary income for 40% of U.S. families. However, 25% of these families are single mother families. Their social situation has put them in a spot where the kids have no father, and typically in gender roles, fathers are seen as the primary breadwinner and primary income. However, Susan Chira says that this reverse gender role may be based on a woman's caregiving nature, which is a biological gender role, and not necessarily a mother trying to provide income, but simply nourishing and providing for her child. However, Young does say having the mom as the primary winner is bad for the kids, just sort of showing how that the concept of women being the primary income for their children isn't necessarily a positive thing according to some people because of past gender roles of males being the primary income for families. Gender roles, its social conditions affect how we think. However, Charlie Reese argues that thinking and our thoughts are based on biological gender identification. So basically, your gender affects how you think, which in some cases can be true. Men think more aggressively than women, while women are more likely to look at a situation, sit down, and try to focus on just that situation, where men are more likely to just go into the situation and try to solve it right away. Charlie Reese quotes, "As much as affront to our dignity as it may be, we are all at the mercy of genes and hormones, to a much larger extent than social determinists are willing to admit, though by now social determination is pretty much a flat earth theory held on intellectual reactionaries." However, Gender Spectrum argues that gender roles cannot be biological. Looking on transgender, they follow gender roles based on their perceived sex, not their biological sex. So basically, Gender Spectrum's argument is that because these transgender people do not act like their biological genetics say they should, then gender roles cannot be based on biology and the natural life. Looking at social and biological, Arnold Sano evidence shows he did a research and assessed how the different genders looked at problems of friends, and women tend to be empathetic while men attempted to offer advice. And his result was women and men both judged social situations and reacted with biological differences based on how they felt is appropriate. So basically, they assess the situation first and their social settings, and then they use biological or natural gender roles to respond to it. Born with Gender Roles, that's the name of the guy. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I don't want to try to pronounce it. But he said that you're born with gender roles that change as life starts to give you new obstacles and ideas. New obstacles or ideas may be a baby, a new job, a new hobby, a new relationship, and not only romantic. And it's important to note that because friendships with a different gender, or someone who's transgender, someone who's gay, lesbian, someone who's feministic, can change your idea on gender roles. And also, gender roles are based on your culture, and that can also change how you perceive things if you move to another country or a new area of the country. From this point on, I'd like to focus my research on both social and biological gender roles and just how they relate more, and having more scientists and psychologists have an explanation and not just my own explanation. And as much research as possible is how much research I'd like to be able to do, because any amount of research is helpful and can help explain what my point is. Each social and biological concept contains a counterargument which relates the two opposing sides, which supports my hypothesis, because my hypothesis was if the two opposing sides could relate, then gender roles came from both biological and social. Questions that I like to continue to study is how has gender roles changed over the years, where women were leaving the house and moving into the workforce. How do gender roles look in other countries? Other countries, such as third world countries, have women working in the field because they're trying to make an income, whereas other places who are like higher countries don't necessarily have to have women in the working field to support a family. Where do people without previous knowledge think gender roles originate from, and why? Before I started this, I sort of thought that gender roles simply came from social aspects, which through this I figured out isn't true, that there is a lot of biological genes and stuff in your body that do affect how you react and your gender's reaction to things. To conclude, I'm hoping you became more aware of how this can affect the future and how these new ideas about genders are arising, and understanding the debate of gender roles and their origin, and hoping you leave with your side and maybe even do some of your own research. And also, the arising of new ideas may leave gender roles as something of the past. Things such as feminism are giving women more power, things such as transgender, changing gender roles from your natural birth. Gay lesbian is changing the typical girls with guys, guys with girls, and just changing how gender roles look in general in society, not necessarily biological. And thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.